Ugh. Put these bad boys down. Oi, you know what? What a heavy day. What a heavy moment. But what a beautiful moment. And here we go. Sorry about that. Moving things around. Moving things around. Can you hear me? Okay. I'm kind of at a. Feel like I'm even at a further remove because I got this big stack of books in front of me. Xenomorph, how you doing, baby? Brandon Young, how you doing, my friend? So, hmm, Adam Parfrey, musician, author, publisher, artiste, connection maker, um, theorist, scholar, without a doubt. Heavy, heavy influence on my young life. How to do this? Um, so what's interesting to me is that uh, I've been doing daily, content on YouTube. I've been trying to be good with that. Keep on it. Data for the data god. Appease the Lord of ones and zeros. Please the algorithm. The algorithm brings the views. Um, so today, big news was Q. Big news on the Q front that fell apart. As per my look, I mean, many people were predicting these things. Half the people say that something's going to go up in flames. Half the people say something's going to go the distance. One group of people are going to be right, patting themselves on the back. Another group is going to go home thirsty. But then, so I was all stoked about making a video about Q. I'm gonna have to turn the Skype off. I'm sorry. Hold on, watch out. Pardona me. Just gotta do this. Pardon me. I'm reaching over this huge stack of books here with a huge stack of books. Everything's relative. There you go. Sorry, Skype. Peace be upon you. Um, so I was all about Q's dead. Yeah, what's Jordan say they're gonna do? F that guy. We'll get to Q. I'm sure we'll have some time left over to talk about Q. But I heard the news today. Oh boy. Today being Friday, May 11th, 2018. I think it was yesterday that dear Mr. Parfrey passed away. Um, Apparently had a stroke and fell down a flight of stairs, just like John Balance of Coil. And there's a connection there. Be wary, Satanists, be wary of staircases. 23 Skidoo. In all seriousness, yokes. So Adam Parfrey passed away. Who was Adam Parfrey? Well, the most profound impact on my life, though he did many different things, was as a publisher, mainly as a publisher at a small house called Feral House. It's hard for me recreating the past, looking back to try and figure out when I first became aware of the work of Adam Parfrey and Feral House. But without a doubt, once he entered my life, um, he was a go-to solid connection for information and data. So stoked whenever I saw anything by Feral House in the bookstore. I remember looking back in my life. There were record labels, publishing houses. For the most part, they're just an aspect. The most important thing being the actual musician, the actual author, the actual subject matter. But there were certain record labels and there are certain publishing companies where for at least a given period of time were were the thing. The bands, the authors, the works were aspects of this bigger thing. And you could look if, I remember, back in the day, you'd see something that was on 4AD the record label 4AD in my indie days, my dark goth days, you know, Black Book of Poetry, Sleeping Like This. 4AD, you would just see that little logo, and sight unseen, you just knew that you had to buy that cassette, that it was going to be good. It was this mark of quality that couldn't fail. Similar experiences I had back in the day as a burgeoning metalhead. The first record label that I probably felt that way about was Combat. Um, Combat were a small label. I guess they were out of California, I think. And the first couple of Megadeth records came on out on it. They my favorite band of all time at that time, Venom, had a lot of stuff coming out on Combat. Combat was another label that was just like de facto saw that your young mind knew to get it. And those things were particularly important back in the, late 80s, early 90s, before the internet really, came about. And I was kind of like a latecomer to the internet, I'll tell you. Um, though I'm sure that there were guys, I know for a fact that there were guys playing around with BBS's bulletin boards and stuff back when I was in high school. And I know that, by the time the internet was a thing, even in, throughout the 90s, but I was never really that attracted to it. It was never really that attractive to me. Um, it wasn't until I think 2000 that I got a computer with a solid internet hookup where I started, going online a lot, you know what I mean? And really, really doing things that way. Um, but back in the day, when people weren't getting their information on the internet, people were getting their information through books and word of mouth and hanging out in bookstores and hanging out in stores and having people, creepy, weird old people lean over your shoulder and be like, if you like them, you should check out Black Oak, Arkansas. Or, you're reading that? He's okay. But if you want the real deal on Crowley, you should check out this book by Israel Regardie. Who's Israel Regardie? You'll see. You know, books, magazines, word of mouth, clubs, dark secrets exchanged in dark corners. When did I first become aware of Adam Parfrey? I don't know. Looking back in my past, I'm going to start with you guys with an archaeological expedition to go into the past, try and figure out where he may have entered my life as a publisher and as an authority on real deal information. This wasn't Adventures Unlimited Press, y'all. This was real stuff of weight and grandeur and glory. This was the real stuff you were waiting for. Man, why won't somebody publish more? When is that guy gonna come out with another book? It's here. You know. Start with an archaeological expedition. It's a personal story that I'm going to share with you because this only makes sense. This tribute only makes sense. The value of this individual to me, Adam Parfrey, who I've never met. Um, what was it? I'm reminded all of a sudden that famous line from the movie Gladiator with Russell Crowe. Who's the guy? Something Oliver. But he's the head of the gladiatorial arena. And then the emperor had given him his freedom. He says, "Shadows of Dust." That guy. Why am I blanking on his name? He was another brilliant guy. Brandon Young, help me out here. Shadows and Dust. Yeah. Well, who said the line though? Who's the actor? You know what I mean? It's not Roger Harris. It's Roger Harris's other guy that he drank with. Oh, sweet Jesus. Oliver Reed. Thank you, Xenomorph. Oliver Reed. I didn't say I know him. I said I met him. Right? So we'll do an archaeological. I can't say that I knew him. but I can say that I was in the same physical vicinity of him at one time, and we'll tell that story as well. A simple story. I saw him on stage. He was on stage. I was in the audience. Did he see me? No. To think that he's dead now. Too young. 61 years old apparently. Far too young to have left us. We'll do the full archaeological. We'll go back in the time, speculate and wonder about where I may have become first aware of his work. We'll talk about the years when he was publishing some of the works of Anton LaVey that was very important to me at the time that he was publishing them. I don't have those books on me now, and I'm thinking that's because Anton LaVey didn't age well with me. And I've fallen out of favor with the Black Pope, um, and he with my, but whatever. We'll get there. We'll get to 2000 and the little event called DisinfoCon. We'll take a moment to also reflect on the Disinformation Publishing House because they're tributary to the story. Then we'll come back and we'll just look at some of the books that I have in front of me here. So I heard that he passed away. Want to do a tribute. Want to talk about him. Didn't know if anyone else would, though 1,008 people should. So I just quickly ran through the bookshelves here, and I know that there are many books that I've read that are not here. Mainly, what happens with me is that I read a book, and after I've read a book, acknowledging the fact that I don't throw books away, obviously, and I don't tend to sell back books to used bookstores. I don't tend to trade books or to speculate or try and sell rare things on eBay. I, like many people, save the books that I've read because I'm going to refer to them again, and I love making love to the past. Nothing gets me more excited than thinking about deep psychological dives into the archaeology of the brain, of my mind, of my thoughts. Where did I pick up an idea? Where did I first hear about it? Reading a book 20 years after I know that I first read it, and think to myself, this mind that looks at these pages, these are the same pages, but they read differently. Remembering things, memories triggered, moments in time, shadows and dust. So we'll do that. We'll do the deep archaeological dig. We'll talk about the resurgence of Satanism and the fact that the boon year of it must have been, oh God, this makes total sense, like 1999. Um, so many books that I'd been waiting for so long to come out, not because they were rare and they need to be republished, but because I had the desire to see more of this material, and just not enough people were writing about this stuff. And then all of a sudden, boom, 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 boom. Amazing amounts of work were coming out, published by Feral House. We'll talk about that. We'll bring it up to 2000 and DisinfoCon. And then I'll reflect upon the later years. I've got a whole stack of books here that I just, knowing that I was going to do this tribute, I simply went through my bookshelves, and just like I was back in the days of going to the bookstores, looking for that little logo that was unmistakable, and just like the 4AD logo, just like the Combat Record logo, was a a sign and a signifier that you didn't need to read what the book was. You didn't need to read the author. You just needed to be happy that Feral House had published another book for you to read, for you to learn, and for you to be blown away by. And I think back to 21 years of age, 22 years of age. When it first started, it must have been 19, 18 years of age. So much life ahead of us. So much life yet to know. And not being the word, not being scarred by age. Not scarred is not the word. Not being tarnished, or things just were new impressions. You know what I mean? Nowadays, I got to be honest. At 42 years old, a lot of my joys, a lot of my life experiences are based on and couched in, experiences of nostalgia, reminiscing, reflection, um, looking at things not as learning new things, but kind of like having like an informed scholarly mind that then comes to the material and learns it. Words fail. You know what I mean? It might not be worth. So, geez, do I seem older? Oh my god! Yikes! You're only 42. Only 42. Jesus Christ. Anyway, and then what we'll do is in finalization, we'll go through the books that I have in front of me. I was pulling them off the shelf, so we'll just go through them, reflect a little upon them, reflect upon the ideas inside. Some of these things I will have little things to talk about because I either haven't read them yet. Hey, let's be honest. You buy a book, and that's the beginning of the experience, and then it takes a while sometimes. Sometimes people buy a book, read a book, go on to the next one. I collect. I find the books where I find them, and like a geologist or they sit on the pile, and I get to them eventually. And I know I buy less books now than I ever did before. I feel like my purchasing and consuming days are behind me, and now are the reflection days when I actually read everything. Anywho, let's start. I most likely first became aware of Adam Parfrey. I'm not exactly sure, but if I remember correctly, um, talking about strange information contained in written form, and the days before the internet when people would learn about things through books. There was another important publishing company with a very important series of works called Research, R-E, capital R, capital E, slash search, Research. And they published many books. They were books. They had pictures. They were large publications. Some of the most famous ones that a lot of people are familiar with. These had various different impacts on people's lives, but everyone I knew in high school, the strange, weird, punko, goth, emo. This was before emo. When emo first started, when I first started hearing the word emo, what people would talk about with emo, it stood for emotional. And the bands that were described as emo were bands like Fugazi, and to a lesser degree, the Krishna core band Shelter, and certainly a band called Shudder to Think. It wasn't until later that, like, I noticed coming back and reflecting that it had turned into this thing with people with like poison hair, like glam metal hair, scene girls, with like, and boys with these like architectural glam metal haircuts, these huge bouffants and reverse beehives into the side and covering the eyes and Lord only knows what kind of music they listen to. My Chemical Romance or some sort of thing that literally I only know about because my friends' children listen to them. You know what I mean? And my wife used to hang out with them in the bar scene in Jersey. Shout out to Aldo's, shout out to the Pipeline, shout out to Connections, right? Don't fuck with my old school Jersey roots, man. Don't fuck with my old school Jersey roots, man. These roots go deep. Anywho, shout out to Asbury Lanes. Yo, what's up? Um, I remember CBGB's before it was a shoe store. What's up? Going to the New York scene. What's up? Mercury Lounge. Anywho, before I go too far afield, Research had many important publications. One of the most important publications for my generation. Now everyone's got spacers like this big and nose rings and piercings all over the place. But I was there for the what felt like the beginning of the scene, and they had books like Modern Primitives. Modern Primitives was a touchstone. If you talk to many people of my generation into piercings and tattoos, they will talk about the early days of this book, Modern Primitives, where people first saw things like genital piercing or full body tattoos, interviews with Genesis Piorge and his then wife. The name escapes me. Getting old. Um, uh, about their piercings and their experiences with psychic TV and the Temple of Psychic Youth and various things. And they also had another one called Freaks. We who are not as others. That was especially profound. It was amazing. There was this one. I growing up. It's gonna be a personal archaeological dig. If you don't, if you know, I think that it's a perfect tribute to Adam Parfrey for me to absolutely lay down on the couch and tell you all my deepest, darkest secrets. You know, I think a more fitting tribute could not be have. Let that be my blood sacrifice and tribute on the altar of this man's memory to see him to the great beyond of wherever he's destined to go. Hope it's somewhere nice, right? He certainly deserves it. Um, so research was the most important research book. Oh, so I was saying freaks we are not as others. So there was this profound year where, growing up, I was always profoundly disturbed by things like The Elephant Man or the movie Mask, physical deformity, disability, amputees. As a child, I was fearful, so fearful and scared. And even, at a point where I was way past it being considered appropriate for a boy, to cry or to cower in fear or to run away from things or not be able to confront things. I couldn't, I had a hard time dealing with, um, you know, anything involving, gross deformities. I remember being like in eighth grade and there was a book about the Elephant Man with, full pictures and, noticing that I had an adverse reaction to it. The other savages in the eighth grade class uh, tortured me with it, would show it to me, and I would freak and have to run out of the room in tears, freaking out. Later on the psychologist's, couch, I put together that what really freaked me so out and really, 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 really scared me about that sort of condition was the notion of a person whose state of affairs was such that the very thing that required them to need human intimacy and connection was the very thing that would keep that connection away. To be a prisoner in one's own body and flesh, to be a monster. Anywho, so but then in like the freshman year of high school when it was almost as if the universe had said to me or decided that was it my freshman year? It might have even been like closer to my sophomore, my junior year, where the universe decided that it was time for me to confront that feeling and to go into the funhouse. Um, I saw a movie with Hervé Villechaize called, was it Adventures in the Forbidden Zone? It also featured uh, Danny Elfman, later of Oingo Boingo fame, and an amazing cast of characters were in it. It was a truly bizarre art film, but that quickly led to me and my friends developing a taste to a desire to be cinephiles of the obscure and the Z-rated. You know what I mean? We went to the cult classic section of the video store and decided made summer plans to watch every movie that they had on that rack. You know what I mean? From Frankenhooker to Todd Browning's Freaks, Confrontation with the Fear. Oh man, we're gonna see this. It's called Freaks. Ben, you want to watch it, man? What's it about? It's got real live circus freaks in it, man. It's a fucking weird movie. We're gonna watch it. We're gonna drop acid and watch it. Okay. Okay. Confront the fear. And as if a great unfolding the very next weekend, what are we going to do? We're going to drop acid and listen to this great new record by The Residents. What's it called? Freak Show, a musical tableau various pieces dedicated to the various people in this sonic freak show, like Benny the Bump, you know what I mean? And Wanda the Worm Woman. Why, Wanda, why do I always watch you cry? You know what I mean? Crazy stuff, crazy mixed up stuff. You know what I mean? Herman the Head. Ah, good stuff. Even the residents themselves, a living freak show. Basically, and then this book by research called Freaks We Are Not as Others, who was basically about freaks, the history of circus freaks and, various freaks, of course, with illustrations to beat the band, photos to beat the band of various people whose physical conditions reflected my personal, horrific body dysmorphia, right? As normal as I looked on the outside, I just knew, you know? I just would look at these people like John Merrick, the Elephant Man, and I know now that it wasn't fear of him. It was this nightmare scenario of knowing that that could be, and the intimate knowledge that for me, and many times, it felt like that what was. Forgive me for my personal psychological hangups and neuroses, you know what I mean? But whatever, going on, moving on, getting back to the thing. After that detour into the freak show, Hall of Mirrors of my mind. Let's bring it back to Adam Parfrey. Do you mind? One of the other books that they had, and no doubt the books where I would have first heard the name of Adam Parfrey or possibly heard the name of Adam Parfrey, was the Industrial Culture Handbook, which was very important to me. The work of Throbbing Gristle, SPK, Enstrozoid and Neubauten, uh, though not mentioned in that tome, but Skinny Puppy. That aspect of experimental turning on to that aspect of experimental music, especially the work of Throbbing Gristle, with its profound import placed not just on the sonics. It wasn't just a band. It wasn't just a band. It wasn't just a lifestyle like punk rock, but it was involved, ceremonial magic and, deconstructing the control system, knowing the control system for what it was, looking at, the true nature of global politics and in its extreme monstrous outcroppings like the Falklands War or mass media control or MTV, you know what I mean? And all this crazy stuff. And so I think without a doubt, I may have seen him mentioned either in the work Industrial Culture Handbook, or maybe he was where I think he may have been featured because I think in addition to later forming this publishing company called Feral House, I think what he first became famous for was this thing called, I think he had a bookstore, another publishing house called Amok. There we go. Oh, whoa, 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 no, don't do anything. Don't turn off the computer. Pile of books. Come back to me. Jesus. We almost had a bibliophilical disaster here. Amok Press, they used to do these things where it was like talk about days before the internet. Where were these? They would put out these massive phone book sized tomes that was just things like you know, uh resources, a list of resources, like control, like, weird, conspiracy theory books or political books on anarchy or where to get zines dedicated to green fascism and, various things. And, weird music where you could find This Is the Day days before finding everything you possibly want inside a video store. You'd have to go and if you wanted, Fortina, where to get, the works of John William Fort, or, who John William Fort, or underground links to, listing of self-published, biographies, autobiographies by UFO contactees and stuff. This sort of stuff. I think very similar to the work of, like, that you would often see, like, in Maximum Rock and Roll, or things like this, but for weird information like this. And I believe him and his partner were featured in the Industrial Culture Handbook, if not that one of the other books by Research that touched upon that scene or spoke about them in that context. I believe, though I could be misremembering, that article with him and his partner could have been reproduced in, Options magazine, or, for God's sake, Spin. You know what I mean? Like, who knows? But I think it may have been one of those old books, one of those old research tomes. And basically, that paints a picture, if not, directly linked to him. He, in my mind, he is linked. The family tree, the genus of where he is, or where he fits into my mind map, is definitely part of that. Going to record stores, weird record stores, like, Flipside or whatever, or Kim's Underground in the city, or, Tower Records in the city before they, moved to Paramus, and finding weird books, you know what I mean, and strange stuff. Then moving on, by that time, so then I would have been, full on into industrial music, and then moving on, and it must have been, and I was always into, I'd read the Satanic Bible and the Satanic Rituals, and I think I had an early copy of the Satanic Witch that had come out on Avon, but I think I had given that to a girlfriend. But Satanism was always very interesting to me. But, this is the day they weren't, coming like today. If you're into Satanism, like, you're set. You know what I mean? Like, there's podcasts and podcasts and podcasts. If you get sick of that podcast on Satanism, there's a different podcast about Satanism, and you can check out their website, or you can listen to what's his face. Why do I not see the Church of Satan on Twitter anymore? Do they block me? I'm realizing I used to see them all the time. I gotta know. Pardon me. I'm obsessed. Then you realize that Twitter must, like, have its own algorithm. Is the Church of Satan? The church. I'm following them. Better check their tweets and replies. Well, 9 hours ago, and they're doing their own trip, their own thing to Adam Parfrey. There you go. It's all about Adam Parfrey over there. But I don't know why it didn't show up in my feed. I figured it would all show up in my feed. Whatever. What are you gonna do? What are you gonna do? Um, Yada yada yada. Sis boom ba. But back in the day, I remember when Anton LaVey, you'd find bits of information, like he would appear on Geraldo Rivera once, you know what I mean? And you'd hold on to that. And, maybe you had a friend who had a VHS copy, and you could watch it over and over again. But it wasn't, like the internet, where you could just get access to all this information over and over again. It was a lot of personal speculation and reflection. And if you didn't reach out, if you weren't a member of a grotto, a lot of this stuff was just, if you went to the industrial clubs, the goth scene, you'd meet other people, see other people with their jewelry, and ask the right question, make the right signifying sign, and have an interesting conversation about, people for a while. But that was that, you know what I mean? And I used to move around a lot. So I used to always be this kind of perpetual hermit, where it was always these big periods of time where, um, before finding the oasis of another other, right? Another friend or would-be friend, long periods of time of just being the only person that I knew that was into a particular style of music, or into a particular author, or philosophy, or religious, or ceremonial magic, or whatever. So, long story short, having become aware of Feral House books, where I really, 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 really became familiar with them. And I know that I was like, so in like 1996, 97, I know that I was aware of them and probably picked up many books, but it wasn't until I think it was like 98 where we were talking about Anton LaVey, and then Anton LaVey, had an interview in, I guess it was Penthouse magazine, and that must have been like 95 or 96. And like I put that copy of Penthouse magazine like on the bookshelf because it was like an interview with Anton LaVey. Like you didn't have interviews with Anton LaVey all over the place. Oh, but I remember, their fanzine or whatever, the Black Flame. I remember being able to pick that up at Tower Records, but that's apropos of nothing. But it's not apropos of nothing because Adam Parfrey had a very profound connection to Satanism and the Church of Satan, especially. I don't know if he was an official member, though I assume that he was, because he later went on to publish many books by Anton LaVey, and there was one magical year, must have been 1999, where a spate of books came out by Anton LaVey. This is a guy who I was aware of the fact that he published the Satanic Witch, um, the obviously the Satanic Bible, duh, and the Satanic Rituals. But beyond that, there wasn't. It's not like he published. It wasn't like he was William Gibson, even like publishing every 4 years. It was certainly wasn't no Stephen King publishing twice a year. But I guess either shortly before or shortly after his death in 1997, several books came out um, by Anton LaVey on Feral House. Satan Speaks, also The Devil's Notebook, and then they also republished The Satanic Witch. Of course, I bought all of them. And, none of them were as good as the Satanic Bible. You know what I mean? Here we have, they also published The Secret Life of a Satanist, written by his life partner, I guess, at the end, Blanche Barton. But, and at the time that it came out, I was like, oh my God, you know what I mean? Like, it was a boon year for the young Satanist. And I remember reading all of those. And then I remember really at that point being really aware of Feral House and being like, Feral House. They were on my wavelength. And then after that, I bought pretty much everything that I could find by them, published by them. And like I said, just like 4AD Records, even if I hadn't heard of the band, even if I hadn't heard of the author, once I saw that little FH logo, I knew that was a book for me. I certainly wasn't going to be hurt by it unless I was hurt in the best way possible. Hurt so good. So, continuing on with our story, I might as well go fast forward to 2000, where another publishing house that I became very aware of and very fond of. Well, the thing also I was introduced to them. I think I first learned about them in an old issue of Wired magazine. It's called Disinformation Co. And they were predominantly, I think, a website where it was supposed to be like a one-stop shop. I think it was supposed to, at the time, they're describing it as a Yahoo for underground information, UFOlogy, conspiracy theory, um, the occult, the paranormal. X Files was like, you know what I mean? There's some people who watch the X Files, and there's some people who watch the X Files like, thank God reality's on. Whew. You know what I mean? Just check into that little magical world for a little while and just luxuriate in being home. Oh my God. You know what I mean? Absolutely. It makes total sense. Anyway, Disinformation Company in the year 2000. It must have been the year 2000. It couldn't have been 99. I think it was the early days of 2000. It couldn't have been 2001. 9/11 hadn't yet happened. Oh my God, though. Um, they had this thing called Disinfocon, and it was a 1 day event, and it was supposed to be a Nova Express for the 2000s, a Nova Express or a Nova convention for the new millennium. The Nova convention having been an event that happened previously in the 1970s around the world and complex work of William S. Burroughs, with its many tendrils and tentacles in alternative culture, both in the world of art, literature, music, and magic, and conspiracy theory and cults and religion, that whole thing. Though at the time I really wasn't. I mean, I was aware of William Burroughs, and I'd seen Naked Lunch, and I'd read Naked Lunch, and was like, "What?" You know what I mean? But that's what it was supposed to be. And speaking at this InfoCon was Grant Morrison. I actually have a DVD. DVD. Now DVDs are nostalgic. Can you believe it? It'll never see Blu-ray. The whole thing's a mess. My past is in shatters and in tatters and torn. Anywho, um, and it's a shame because I have the DVD, and what it is was, there were, who was there? It was Grant Morrison, Genesis George spoke before the transition. Um, I got to see Robert Anton Wilson spoke there. I saw him live. Who else was there? Adam Parfrey was there. We'll get to that. Also, guys from Steam Shovel Press were there. They had a little tete-a-tete. They had a little mini symposium about conspiracy theory with guys whose name I can no longer remember. Who else? Who else is there? Maybe, oh, they had what was her name? Was Karen Black, who was a kind of musician come performance artist, no pun intended. The Voluptuous Horror of Karen Black did a little live action thing, including the famed Wall of Vaginas. You had to be there. Um, uh, and Joe Coleman was there and blew himself up, one eye down. I guess was trying to lose another. He lit himself on fire with fireworks. Marilyn Manson spoke by video connection. This is like in the days, like, oh, video connection to him in San Francisco. I was like, blah. Didn't really care at all. He was too popular. You call that alternative? Please, do you know what I mean? So what if he's like, ew? You know what I mean? Oh, right. Please. I knew about the real stuff anyway because I was so 10th generation. Anyway, regardless of all this and apropos of nothing, who else spoke? Oh, so Grant Morrison spoke. I know I've told the story before, but I'll tell it again. Grant Morrison there was all in his like accent glory, like guys with English accents, like fuck you, like it's like an old joke, but it's worth saying. Like you're not. You come over from, if you go to, it's like a girl like with those glasses, like when a girl puts on glasses, like a 7 can become an 8 or an 8 can become a 9. Guys like come over with their English accents. Everyone assumes that there's punk rock as punk rock can be, right? They hung out with Sid Vicious and, Johnny Lydon, whatever. So Grant Morrison comes out, fuck, whatever, dude. Grant Morrison comes out and is like, makes some pithy comment about coming up on drugs, and everyone's like, "Oh, Grant Morrison, ah!" And he's up there doing his punk rock and roll, cult literature, taking hashish in India. Big deal. You took drugs in a foreign country. Do you know what I mean? A lot of people take drugs in foreign countries. They're called junkies. You know what I mean? Anyway, fuck you, Grant Morrison. I never liked the guy. All the people try to tell me he's so amazing. It's so amazing. I read The Invisibles. I don't get it. Maybe because I had a bad experience with him at Disinfocon. Anyway, long story short, he's up there saying piffy, blah, 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 blah. Then it gets to a question and answer period. And he had said this thing about like, World War II, like it's saying about the Holocaust. And not like a Holocaust denial, but some like aspect of like, like Kali and Shiva and that which we see as black is also white and it's all one big experience and blah, blah, blah. And I basically asked a question about like, well, gee, that's fine for you to say up there on stage, coming up on whatever fantastic drug you're on. I said, but how do you think like actual people with the experiential reality of being in a concentration camp or going into the ovens would feel about this notion that their existence was yada 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 sis boom ba some magical mystery tour trip to the unknown or whatever. I don't know what I said. I was like 20 something and whatever. And he had some he did his best to respond to my bullshit question. I don't know. Maybe I'm processing it differently, but they cut that out. It's not on the DVD. The different aspects of the question and answer period are on. Ooh, you. Disinfocon. Well, now disinformation, the website no longer is, and the publishing house still exists to a degree, but it's limping along. It's been sold multiple times, and now it's this tiny little imprint and whatever. Anyway, back to the story at hand. Adam Parfrey, though, was at Disinfocon, and Adam Parfrey's lecture. Let's see if we can find one book by his. Okay, here are two good examples. We've got Cult Rapture, a book that he did called Cult Rapture, basically about cults, weird underground scenes, the history of them, reflecting upon them, different, cultures and subcultures that you never knew existed right next door, what they believed, things from as simple as things as like the Jehovah's Witnesses to, you know, uh, sex clubs for, the differently abled. Do you know what I mean? Um, Weird things, you know what I mean? Like Aryan dating sites, weird stuff, weird stuff. And then let's see if we have another one here. This is not something that this is something that he published, though he didn't put together. This Kooks, Guide to the Outer Limits of Human Belief. This is the sort of stuff that you would find on printed by Feral House. And so his lecture was very profound and very influential on me because he talked about things like, number one, he talked about things that you might not know about, like 14 times type updates and stuff about like mysteries of the unknown that's right there out in the open and no one knows how to talk about it. I think he may have talked about them. Also at Disinfocon, they also showed a little film about the Montauk Project, where I first was introduced to Preston Nichols, Sturt Swerdlow, Duncan Cameron, and the whole, it's a bunch of gay guys jerking off and easy, lazy boy recliners in an RV. You know what I mean? That's essentially the thumbnail on Montauk Project if you really want to know what it's really about. Anyway, then he also talked about, and what was really amazing that we talk about all the time, this a lot of this stuff was unknown to me. This is, like I said, this is the early days of the real internet boom. This was way before internet 2.0. This is, a full decade before, YouTube and all this stuff really came about. So believe you me, this is a lot of stuff that I was hearing for the first time, even if I was, one of the younger guys in the room. And he talked about, how, it's a true fact that, or at least it was true back then. I can only assume it's even more true now, that the way that they make insulin for diabetics involved, cross pollinating, human genes into pigs. That most of the insulin is produced by some sort of hybridization process involving, cultivating these cultures from pigs. And he pointed out the fact that it was a known fact that was little published, that many times, pigs that had been so crossbred as to have certain genetic human characteristics and genomes in their system would escape either into the wild population or mix with pigs that were ready for slaughter. So basically the bottom line was, whether or not we believe it or not, if you like bacon, you've probably, in a very fair and safe, guarantee, at some point in your life have engaged in acts of, perchance involuntary cannibalism. Happy birthday. He also did a large segment about, like I said, weird people with weird beliefs. He did a whole little section on Kathy O'Brien's Transformation of America. And this was all new information to me. He also did a thing about, before we get to Kathy O'Brien, he introduced us to the world of slash fiction, the notion that the fact that there were, as we spoke, there were people meeting, having small little comic book conventions of very, very small, limited size, where the books being exchanged were not mainstream comic books or comic book collections, but were rather homemade and Xerox copied erotic tales called slash fiction. And the reason that they were called slash fiction was that these were books, for want of a better term, publications, homemade publications made usually by lesbian women, right? That were tales of homoerotic romance between various science fiction and um, pop culture icons. So the reason it was called slash fiction was because it was usually things like Kirk slash Spock, you know what I mean, with illustrations, Kirk, if we don't find some way to get ourselves excited, we'll never get off this planet. The machine operates on love. You know what I mean? Like whatever the case may be, you know what I mean? Like Starsky slash Hutch, where they, God, I can't believe we got out of that, that death defying situation, kiss me, you fool. You know what I mean? Like this is what he talked about. And I was like, wow. And it was like this is like I said, this is pre-internet. So this is like stuff that it was like, you really? People do that? You know what I mean? It was like brony underground. You know what I mean? Imagine hearing about bronies, but at the time that you're hearing about bronies, you're not just being introduced to the culture of young men who like My Little Ponies. You're being introduced to young men who like My Little Ponies, and you're being told about My Little Pony for the first time. It's like, what would you think if I told you there's a world of whatever? And so he did this whole thing on Kathy O'Brien, telling the whole story about the transformation of America. And at this point in time, you couldn't get a copy of Transformation of America by Kathy O'Brien. Number one, eBay wasn't even a thing, to the best of my knowledge. Is that true? eBay was probably a small thing. I mean, eBay was probably a thing, but you know what I'm saying. You know what I'm saying. It wasn't currently in print, right? You couldn't just go online and see Kathy O'Brien or read the transcript. I was being told this for the first time. Like, what would you believe if I told you that there's a gal who's published a book and she claims, you know what I mean, that she was a victim of MK Ultra mind control, so we had just heard some guys talking about MK Ultra, the reality of the MK Ultra program, the reality of Operation Garden Plot, the real nefarious actions of the FBI, the fact that I was just told for the first time that J. Edgar Hoover was a homosexual. Like all this stuff was coming down the pike real quick at this InfoCon. They also had a little short film about Howard Bloom, who recently just did an interview with Jordan B. Peterson. Everything goes in a loop. It's all just a big muddle. Time becomes a thing. Whatever. So anyway, so Adam Parfrey did this whole presentation, and the biggest thing I remember was this takeaway was his thing they did on Kathy O'Brien, where he had slides from her things, her books. Oh, he also did this whole thing like where he was showing us like slides from like children's books that were written in San Francisco to introduce kids to the concept of alien contact. Do you know what I mean? Like My Special Friend Borger. You know what I mean? This is Borger. It's a picture of a gray alien like hanging next to a kid. They're hanging out together, like little like golden books, but like little children's books. But they're designed to do things like you know like introducing the concept of like the fact that you've got a hybrid brother on a mothership. You know what I mean, to a little kid in San Francisco, like big-eyed kids talking to other big-eyed kids. Like he doesn't look like the rest of us, but he likes to play too. He teaches us games where he talks with his mind. All this like crazy stuff. We were like, I was there like, what? They had a dream machine, like the dream machine that William S. Burroughs and whatchamacallit, Brian Geeson used to experiment on. They had one of those set up. I thought it was just like a strobe light. Anyway, oh, one last thing I'll say about this InfoCon. It turned out this was one of these things that's happened to me many times in my life. Me and my girlfriend at the time were hanging out, we're talking to various people there, and then all of a sudden we realized we started to come to the impression, and I swear to God, I think this was true, of like the hundreds and hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of people that were in attendance. This is like the internet bubble hadn't yet burst. This was like the heyday of internet culture, and it's just all everyone's a millionaire and blah 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 on paper and all this stuff. You know what I mean? People talk about like their amazing gig at Babelfish with their pink hairdo and all this stuff, whatever. Um, came to the impression that we thought that we were probably one of maybe possibly 10 people who had paid to get in there, and that for the most part it probably seemed like everyone was on a press pass, like everyone and their mother had known someone who got them in. Anyway, maybe that's just the way I felt about things. Maybe that's how I saw myself, as just one of the few pinks that ended up paying to get in to the big party. Anyway, so that's where I saw Adam Parfrey speak, and it was amazing. He also did music later on. I know that he did an album primarily with Boyd Rice of Non, called, I think it's called Music, Martinis, and Misanthropy, I think it's called. Very interesting character, and like I said, later on, you know what I mean. I just got really into knowing that Feral House was what I was about, and I was very interested in everything they put out, and picked up a lot of what they put out. They put out Sex and Rockets, which was the biography or of I'm always blanking on this motherfucker's name, and I swear to God, I know everything about his life. Um, just give me the name, live chat. JPL hung out with L. Ron Hubbard, acolyte of Aleister Crowley. I forget his name. We've talked about him like 10 times over the last 10 broadcasts. Jack Parsons. Thank you, Reamsey. I'm going to have to just write Jack Parsons in reverse on my fucking head. Or maybe it's already there. Anyway, Jack Parsons. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Sam. Thank you, Reamsey. Shout out to Sam and Reamsey. Hope you guys are getting something out of this presentation. Hope everyone's having a good time at home. Anyway, moving on. So Adam Parfrey, everything you want it to be about, everything you want to know. Feral House Publications, amazing publication house. As time went on, let me try and order these books somewhat to find a kind of a nice, tangible way to step through them, to talk about the pros and the cons, to talk about the heydays, and maybe we're kind of slowed down. Then we'll also talk about, we'll put these two. We'll put these two here. Eh, we'll go through them. We'll just go through them a little bit, and we'll talk about each step of the way. It'll give us a little pithy opportunity to talk about the various books and what they meant and the kind of culture they're attached to. Oh, very good, very good. Hey, Raksha, how you doing, baby? How you doing? There you go. Fantastic, fantastic. We'll go through them, and we'll be able to just talk and reflect a little bit on the various things, and maybe just the topics, and maybe just concepts, or maybe just have a little bit of a story to tell about each one, and then we'll talk about finalize it by saying goodbye to the guy, and then also reflect. I think, like, it's a tribute to Jack Parsons, and then Q, and then I think all I'll say to Q is goodbye. I predicted you would die. You've died, and I'm very happy to know that I'm not going to let the death of Adam Parfrey be overshadowed by the opportunity to topically talk about Q and its demise. There are 10,000 other jackasses that are making videos about Q right now. Let them talk about Q. I will gleefully pass up the opportunity to talk about Q and its fact that it's turned into be the nothing burger that I predicted it would be, to take the opportunity to pay a small tribute to Adam Parfrey and Feral House Publications. Okay. Beneath the Underground by Bob Black. So here's a great one, but this is like, part of, what's so good about Feral House is that, and knowing that I could just see the little Feral House logo, and I know, and just picked it up, even though I didn't really know anything about it. Bob Black was, I guess he was like a underground. Yeah, I mean, I guess what he was kind of like one of the first, like, like professionally homeless individuals, situationist. I think it's been a while. You know what I mean? But I knew nothing about this man and his work. I knew nothing about this man and his work at all. The only reason that I bought the book was because it said Feral House, but that's how it was able to go back in the day. You went on a journey. You didn't know not everything was going to be a hit. You'd buy records just for the cover, and sometimes the record would be an amazing record that would change your life, and sometimes it would be terrible. But it was great, and this also introduced me to the work of Hakeem Bey, and things like anarchism. Like, I don't think, like, I think this was the first thing that I read that I could ever really say was, anarchist, not in a fashion sense, not an anarchy symbol or anarchy shirt or patch that you bought in Hot Topic, but like an actual, like, work about reflecting upon, like, the politics of anarchy, or the explanations for the justification of anarchist actions, or like culture jamming, or things of this nature. So it's been a while, but that was definitely, like I said, that was like part of the beauty of hooking up into that, finding a publishing house like Feral House that you could trust, because not only would it give you what you wanted and what you knew you wanted, but it would also wink and nod and lead you into good directions to find new works and new stuff of interest to explore. Like I said, the Cult Rapture, at the time that I saw Cult Rapture, it was amazing, because this was like, there were so many times when I'd see something by Feral House, and you could encounter Feral House publishing books. I saw some of their books in as bookstores, as mainstream and MOR, middle of the road, as like Borders and Books a Million, or Barnes and Noble. And Cult Rapture was right on the nose for me, because I was very fascinated. Always in my life I was very fascinated by cults and underground religious movements, and spirituality and the extremes of human spirituality. So it was very, very interesting stuff. And some of the stuff was just fun, like kooks, just fun stuff, just very informative, right on the nose, or leading you to new things. This is a later book. This is a later book that they published later on. In fact, if you notice, what's interesting about this one, it's Secret Agent 666, Aleister Crowley, British Intelligence and the Cult, by Richard B. Spence. This was probably like the hype joking 99th book, biography about Aleister Crowley that I read. Hey, I mean, is it accurate information? Is it not accurate information? But what's so interesting to me about this, and kind of like what makes this particular book interesting to me, is that this is the one book on Feral House that I'm aware of that, if you look at the spine, doesn't have the famous Feral House logo on it. It was a later book, so I don't know if they were experimenting. Later on, he kind of got away. Adam Parfrey got away from Feral House Publishing and did another imprint that we'll get to. What was it called? Process Media. Oh my God! Then we have to talk about Process Media, and that's gonna be a whole other adventure. Fucking adventure. 2008. I can't believe this book was published in 2008, because I think of this as like a relatively recent book by Feral House. That's 10 years old. Oh my God, this book is 10 years old. Oh, sweet Jesus, we're getting old. I'm getting fucking old. I can't believe it. Oh my God. Oh my God. We'll get to the Process Media publications. We'll just be here for like 10,000 years. Then we'll do those three in order, because that'll work. Sweet Jesus, because the Process Church, its connection to the Temple of Psychic Youth, the attempted reboot of the Process Church, by we'll get there. I guess we'll get there. Oh my God. So don't go there too quickly. Oh my God. But there's some books I can't find, that I don't have them here, but I know that I have them, like Apocalypse Culture. Some of these books might be, having read them, they might be in storage at my mom's house. Getting old. Running on Empty, The Pathology of Civilization by John Zerzan. I know I've spoken about John Zerzan in the past. John Zerzan is what's known as a green anarchist, and oftentimes at the time, I guess, considered like the main proponent of green anarchism. No. Anarcho-primitivism. My apologies. Anarcho-primitivism, which is like, if green anarchism is like Earth first, anarcho-primitivism are the group of individuals who look at extremists like Earth First engage in acts of eco-terrorism and go, you fucking wannabe sellouts. John Zerzan is the kind of guy, like, there's like the level 3 vegan who he doesn't eat anything with a shadow. Um, Basically, what anarcho-primitivism basically stands for is the notion that modern society, the accoutrements of modern society, are completely unsustainable at their core and at their outset. So things like cities, things like anything that's not, even like, if you the work of John Zerzan, really, he's like, when do things start going astray for John Zerzan? Things really start getting control really is born and is set in and becomes a psychological and methodological problem at the onset of written language. Do you know what I mean? Honestly, like he's the kind of guy like that. You know, the ideal state of man is, you know, man in primitive nature. Do you know what I mean? Pre-agriculture, you know, standing settlements and standing armies. He's really like, you know what I mean, like the nomads had it best. And he's also like one of these guys who's like the entire system's falling apart. You know what I mean? There's nothing you can do to control it. The only time that we're going to return to the state of nature is when all the machines break down and the electricity turns off. May that day come. May that day come. Here's some. I'll just read some of the. This is like a collection of articles or like I guess like essays. At the time that I first read this one, my God, this was written in 2002. Jesus Christ, I'm old. There were just things that were just the failure of symbolic thought. You know what I mean? Like the notion that when man first started like getting language, that's when you couldn't just know a tree to be just a tree, but it had to be a tree. You know, that was somehow something a problem. The Age of Nihilism, Postscript to Future Primitive, R.E. the Transition, Why I Hate Star Trek. Oh my God. Who is Chomsky? Hakeem Bey, postmodern anarchist in quotes. Exactly. Like Hakeem Bey is like to like really, you know what I mean? For John Zerzan, likes of John Zerzan. Bum yourself out, go look up John Zerzan if you're sick and tired of who was the guy that I was recently in love with for 30 seconds. The guy who was like the entire world is coming apart and is going to be destroyed by 2018. I was talking about him all the time. Now I can't remember for the life of me. Who was the guy that I was talking about? Something something Guy McPherson, who's like by 2020 the ice caps will have melted and we'll all be eating human flesh for dinner. You know this guy. You know, like if you're not bummed out enough by him, you can go ahead and read John Zerzan. Another later one written, published by Feral House, The Secret King, The Myth and Reality of Nazi Occultism. You know, Nazi occultism. It's one thing for me is that like I think it's very important that you know part of why I talk. Oh, so let's talk about these guys. Stephen E. Flowers and Michael Moynihan, special Michael Moynihan. This is where, you know, in this feral house world, this dark cultural world, the world of Satanism and anarcho primitivism and the modern occult and ethno nationalism, it all kind of meets together, you know, in this weird world. Michael Moynihan, I believe he was in a band called Blood and Axis, which were kind of like no apocalyptic folk band like Current 93 or Death in June or who was the other big one? I used to love them. Me and names, I'm getting so old. It was the guy. Who was the guy? Sweet Merciful Crap. Anyway, but you know, part of why when I talk about new age stuff and why I think it's very important to be exact and about the history of some of these methodologies or where some of these kind of notions and ideas that come into the new age underground, why I think some problematic ones like some of the darker work of David Icke or Carrie Cassidy from Project Camelot, or you know Simon Park's where it intersects with the Jewish question. Why I get so excited about it is because, and not excited about it like it's good, but excited about wanting to talk about it and point it out and realizing it if for what it was or what the dark potentialities in it are, is that you have to remember that the Nazis were born out of the same kind of mystical leanings that thrive in our new age culture. You know, tarot card readings and rune magic and you know channeled information from ancient wisdom and you know nudism even and breatharianism and sun gazing and a lot of these common you know holistic medicine you know homeopathic remedies like so much of that stuff was what Adolf Hitler and Goebbels and Himmler and all these people, and the forerunners of the SS, like the Thule Society, what it all came from. And when it gets to the work of Boyd Rice from Non or Michael Moynihan, there was definitely like there were a lot of people who would accuse Death in June of being Nazis, and Death in June would be like, we're not Nazis, and I'd be there going like, well, you're not, but kind of you are. Like the whole notion of the name, like it gets weird, and I'm not trying to accuse anybody of anything because people can be into a variety of things for different things. But Michael Moynihan and especially Boyd Rice were the first kind of guys that were coming out, along with guys like Jeff Goad from Answer Me fanzine, who were like, can we just be honest and just admit that we don't like to hang out with black people? Like honestly, like Boyd Rice is a well. First of all, he was for a while. He was an actual Nazi. We have to know that he used to hang out with the friggin' who were the guy, the Metzger brothers, like Richard Metzger and his son. He used to hang out with them all the time in uniform. Don't tell me that Boyd Rice wasn't a Nazi, especially if you listen to some of Boyd Rice's music. You know what I mean? He'll drop an N bomb like nobody's business. You know what I mean? Handpicked by Anton LaVey, the rumor goes, to be the next leader of the Church of Satan, rather than blah, the guy that's there now, Peter H. Gilmore. But Boyd Rice turned it down, which I think says a lot about what the Church of Satan's actual power and culture is. And, Boyd Rice is the first individualist who was like, yeah, I'd rather in 2002, I got better things to do than try and be the head of this bunch of fucking followers. Anyway, not to get too ahead of and beating up on, Anton LaVey or the Church of Satan. It is what it is. My statements about them exist and are out there. And look, I mean, Boyd Rice is who Boyd Rice is, but it's a complicated figure and character, and I don't think it's disparaging to identify somebody as someone who I think they are. No, Sam Shadow, I'll tell you this, is that Boyd Rice, he might not consider himself a Nazi, but he used to wear Nazi uniforms and hang out with people who were neo-Nazis, like Richard Metzger. He was on, I think there's an interview with him. It's him, uh, Timothy or Richard Metzger, and they're being interviewed by Bob Larson. It's the same thing like that band Radio Werewolf. Like Zena LeVay was an absolute ethno-nationalist. Like she was, not holding back on her thoughts about the superiority of white people. First of all, behind closed doors, it's known that Anton LaVey was like, if he had his druthers, like if you read the books that were published, the essays that they published under Feral House, like the Satanic, what was it, the Satan's Notebook, and Satan Speaks, or the Devil's Notebook and Satan Speaks. There's plenty of them where it's read between the lines. He's talking about it'd be okay if there was like if he had his druthers, he thinks that it's normal and organic for everybody to want to live with their own kind, to not be disturbed by the cultures of other people, to not be disturbed at all. And why can't we just accept the fact that not everyone's going to get along with everybody else and not everybody's fantastic? Also, in one of those books, I forget which one it is, Satan Speaks or the Devil's Notebook, and they don't hold together that cohesively. He has that weird article or essay where he's talking about the desire for um like a Jewish SS. It's weird, it's strange, and it's there. I may not be able to cite it exactly, but don't tell me it's not true. First of all, don't tell me that there's an equal number of African American Satanists as there are white Satanists. For a group of harsh individualists, everyone tends to look and dress and act exactly the same. It's like, oh, you're a female Satanist? Let me guess. You're wearing fishnet stockings, stiletto heels. You either have black hair with bangs or fire engine red hair with bangs or platinum blonde with bangs. Gotcha. Oh, you know what I mean? It's an old cliche. It's an old cliche. Hey, listen, I don't want to be a member of any club that would have me as a member. Dark Mission. And I love the Church of Satan. I love Anton LaVey and what he did in his work, and having had the opportunity to read and explore it and to even talk shit about it. You know what I mean? It is what it is. Dark Mission, The Secret History of NASA by Richard C. Hoagland and Mike Barra. Here's what's great about this. Number one's just great. I mean, it's a great piece. Um, conspiracy. I don't want to get my like reflecting, having this book in my hands again, and like thinking about this stuff. I realize like fuck internet conspiracy theories. It's like this is the rate and speed at which conspiracy theory research should come out and be appreciated and absorbed is through reading, without a doubt. What's hysterical to me is that I forgot the name Mike Barra. Mike Barra was literally the first guy that banned me on Twitter. Mike Barra, he of the worst haircut ever. And if you go to him, tell another guy who you talk about, whatever, like, just a totally pro Trump asshole, banned me on Twitter within I swear to God, like I joined Twitter and within like 2 days he had banned me. Within 2 days. Talk about not being able to take a joke. Meanwhile, Walter Bosley hangs, takes like every hit I hand off to Walter Bosley. Walter Bosley's like, yeah, so what? Whatever. Fuck you. God bless Walter Bosley. Why he's never been on my show? God damn it! Now that I get views, I should get him on. Aleister Crowley and the Ouija board, another later published one. Like I said, the majority of my Feral House collection is obviously, I bought it in 1998, 1999, 2000. I read it then, and I put it in a box somewhere. Another later one by Aleister Crowley and the Ouija board. Small but great, wonderful, wonderful, wonderful. Not only one of these books that not only works because it's historical in the sense that you get a lot of history about Aleister Crowley and his kind of his place within the milieu of spiritualism. But it also is like, it reflects on the Ouija board. You know what I mean? I bought this book, read it, and then went out and bought another Ouija board. I hadn't done it since like eighth grade. You know what I mean? God bless. Okay, so we'll get to that. Okay, okay. Oh, here's what I also want to do. Okay, so here's what we're gonna do. We've got 3 books in a row, and that'll be a brilliant way to end because that'll kind of bring us to the end of the history. Oh shit! Hold on, wait. I gotta find some. Found it. Found it. Found it. Found it. Thank God that wasn't a wild goose chase. Oh my God. Okay, so here's what we have to do now. Okay, process meeting makes so much sense. What was this proposed? This is Feral House 2. Okay, so here we go. Okay, so this is it. Let's go back to 1995. I'm aware of the work of Throbbing Gristle and the Temple of Psychic Youth. Post Throbbing Gristle, let's talk about Genesis Peorage. Genesis Peorage, in Throbbing Gristle, him and the various members, especially Sleazy, and as well as Chris Carter. Chris Carter was more doctrinaire in his approach, I think. They were very interested in the work, having been introduced to the work basically by an acolyte, a master magician by the name of William S. Burroughs, who we've already spoken about. So coming into industrial culture and industrial music culture, I don't give a fuck about Nine Inch Nails. You know what I mean? I don't give a fuck about uh, electro body music or Nitzareb. What I really give a fuck about is experimental noise music and breaking control systems and identifying control systems. Becoming aware of the work of Anton LaVey. I'm becoming no, of Aleister Crowley, but really not just the um, rumors and hedonistic mythology of the great beast, but being introduced into the actual work of the Ordo Templi Orientis. Also becoming aware of chaos magic. You know, the work of Peter Grant and Peter Carroll and Phil Hine. So I'm becoming aware of all this stuff, and somewhat tangentially, so somewhat through reflection and study of the primary source materials. But and then I'm also becoming aware through that milieu of what they were also interested in were cults. And there was a cult I was aware of. I was being hinted, and like I said, these are not the days of the internet where you could get all this information. You become interested or aware of something, and be able to find tons of resources to educate yourself about it. So literally, in one of the I think it's in the Industrial Culture Handbook, there's a picture of, or maybe it's the one Research Magazine, Research Publications also did a special tome that was just dedicated to William Burroughs himself. There's a picture of him with the e-meters from Scientology. And so I was, even at that time, even to be aware of Scientology, it's like you couldn't get anti-Scientology publications all over the place. Again, like the Penthouse magazine, I had that copy of Time magazine where the Cult of Greed, you know what I mean? And I had it, like, I put it on a bookshelf because it was, book, like you'd read it, like it was, you couldn't get tons of information about anything. And you didn't want to get too close to Scientology because if they got your name and phone number, they would kidnap you in the night. That's what I thought they would do. When I took the personality test, it was an experience of, like, literally like going up to Mount Perilous. It was like I was scared out of my mind that they were going to. I gave them a fake name, and that they were going to get be able to look at my test results on the Scantron and be able to find me on the psycho grid and identify my soul and trap me on the astral, and then they would have me like a Mormon in a white suit and black pressed pants asking people for money all the time. I don't know what the fuck I thought was going to happen to me. But, so I became aware of the fact that William S. Burroughs was interested or had experimented or was a part of Scientology for a brief period of time. And that was it. You get like 2 or 3 sentences about it in some publication. And then you'd just be left to speculate and spend years going, what the fuck was that about? Going back and reading Naked Lunch again, trying to see, like, is Dr. Benway L. Ron Hubbard? Like, I don't know what the fuck any of this means. Maybe I should look at it while I'm on heroin. I don't know. Does anyone want maybe life hasn't begun until I get another dude to touch my dick, even though I don't feel even remotely gay, but I guess that's something I'm supposed to do. You know what I mean? David Bowie, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, long story short, I also became aware of a group called the Process Church of the Final Judgment. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. And it's funny the things connect and the way things don't connect. So here's how it goes. So it must have been, I was reading a magazine came out called Industrial Nation. And in it, it was right around the time that Skinny Puppy were making a record. It had to have been 1996 because they made that record came out. Dwayne Goddell, the drummer, died. I think it was 95 while they were making the record. So the record must have come out in 96. No, it was 95. It must have been 95. But at the time that they were making it, they were also working. They were working a lot with Genesis George, and I guess him and Kevin Key of Skinny Puppy. No, it might have been Navigoga, where they were all trying to restart. Well, the Skinny Puppy record was even called The Process. They were trying to start basically restart the process, and they had a small 2-page article in Industrial Nation magazine number 8, I don't know, whatever the fuck it was, where they briefly talked about the history of the Process Church of the Final Judgment, which was an offshoot of Scientology that was very big in the 60s, big in the 60s, late 60s, early 70s. And this Industrial Nation article was trying to basically say that Genesis, George, and Skinny Puppy were basically kind of trying to restart it. This would have been Temple of Psychic Youth, Topi, would have already run its course after Throbbing Gristle experimenting with the notion of pop culture stardom as being cult-like and guru-like, and also trying to experiment and trying to figure out a way to take the negative aspects of cults like the Manson family, the Church of the Final Judgment, or Scientology, and trying to find, or the Church of Satan, and trying to find like a way that you could empower it and reuse it to like freak out the man and break the system. And like, it's a cult, but whatever. And I forget what my coyote number was. Don't tell me I don't know what the fuck I'm talking about. But anyway, So there was that, and then they tried to start up the process magazine process again, but it didn't really go anywhere. So like I said, it's like 1995, 96. I'm exposed to this article. I'm like, ooh man, but you couldn't just find things all over the place. What you did find was a lot of rumor and innuendo, because the Process Church of the Final Judgment was one of the many people who were blamed with the Manson family murders, like that they were the guys that turned Charlie Manson into a super freak, along with Scientology possibly. And they were also linked to the by a guy, I forget what his name is, a guy who wrote a book called I think it was called The Garbage People. Well, he was the guy who linked them with the Manson family, but it was also there was another guy, I think he wrote a book that linked them to the Son of Sam murders. There was a rumor that the Son of Sam was a member of a satanic cult, or satanic cults were the ones that were giving him LSD and making him think that the dog was talking to him. Sam Berkowitz, the Son of Sam killer in the 70s. And that would be the church of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. Anyway, what they had done was they had come out, they would dress all in black, and they would do the natural life of Jimmy Savile. Oh my God, Jimmy Savile was interviewed in one of the magazines. They ended up being famous because they published these very, very intriguing magazines. And later on, Feral House republished them, the sex issue, the fear issue, and the death issue, propaganda and holy writ of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. Oh my God. So when I found it, so I was very interested in the Church of the Process Church of the Final Judgment. What's also interesting is that there's a hardcore band called Integrity, and their lead singer is Dwid, I think his name was, or is. He also had a noise project called Psy Warfare. All these things are coming at you fast and loose. I know, tangentially connected. But what's so interesting to me is that he was obviously into the Process Church of the Final Judgment, because if you look at a lot of Integrity, a lot of their music pulls upon its mythology and methodology and studies. But to the best of my knowledge, no one in that hardcore scene, even the guys that loved Integrity, and there were a lot of guys that loved Integrity, picked up on that aspect of it. And he never had, I don't think, had any public communication with Genesis P-Orridge, or really ever spoke about any sort of connection to industrial culture, even though he had that noise project. So you know that he was all about it in some degree, or would have had to have known about the work of Throbbing Gristle, et cetera, et cetera. Anyway, long story short, no, it's not. It's the story's going on and on, super long. It's crazy, bizarre rambling. So I'm into the Process Church of the Final Judgment, learning about it, knowing about it. You can't do it. There's not a lot of information out there. I know that they're an outset, or an aspect of that Robert de Grimstone and the other main leader, I forget what her name was. Where's her picture? Um, were that the Process Church of the Final Judgment had started off as an offshoot of Scientology, and then became, something different, and then later on developed these weird philosophies and rituals and religions, whatever. But thanks to Feral House, I nearly, like I said, the book, I would be in there in my mind wanting to know about the more about the Process Church of the Final Judgment. It's not like it's a thing that can come up as a topic of conversation in every lunch hour of every day. Even most people know this experience. Your wife, your husband, your significant other. There's going to be things that you're into and they're into as well. And then there's going to be things that, like my wife, if I start talking about, when I start talking about my wife about like fringe religions from the 1960s and 70s, or Scientology, or L. Ron Hubbard as a mystic or a cult practitioner or ceremonial magic, she goes, "Oh, really, Ben? We got to get the kids to school. Can this wait?" She'll give me a moment, what I mean? She'll listen to me and hear me out, when I'm like, but no, you don't understand. You know what I mean? I just said that the other day. And then look, check this out, Jackie, blah, 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 blah. And then she'll be like, fascinating. Shut up. You know what I mean? But it loves a two-way street. I'm like that about anything. So anyway, the book comes out and you're like, oh, thank you, God. Thank you, Feral House. Oh my God. Oh my God. There's a whole book about it. You just published a whole book about it. So what year was this? Oh my God. 2009. My dreams came true. Love, sex, fear, death. The inside story of the Process Church of the Final Judgment, written by a member of the organization, Timothy Wiley. edited by Adam Parfrey. Rest in peace, God bless you, peace be upon you. And I nearly died. I was like, oh my God, thank you, Jesus. Finally, an actual history, finally, an actual, like a whole book of information about it. Oh God. I nearly shit twice and died. And then Adam Parfrey hits us with a double whammy and puts out this deluxe edition that was, like I said, these magazines that they were famous for putting out. Here's the guy, Robert de Grimstone himself. Let's see if I can do my best, Robert de Grimstone. Separated at birth. Um, I still don't know if I'm a Jehovah or a Satan or a Lucifer. I'll figure that out someday. Um, but yeah, just amazing interviews with Charles Manson. I mean, it was ridiculous. So to have this edition limited to 1,200 copies, everyone kicks my ass. I got one. Great stuff. Oh my God. So like I said, thank you, Adam Parfrey, for all the love, all the beauty, the things that you put out. This stuff, fed my dreams, informed me. Like I said, you couldn't find all this stuff on the internet, but thanks to Feral House Publications, I found it in print. Leading off his work with the Process Church of the Final Judgment, he then kind of laid low on the Feral House front, though I'm sure they still ended up publishing. And then he had this new venture called Process Media, which hold on, bear with me. Okay, I guess it ran concurrently with Feral House. It was a different imprint, but talking about the Process Church of the Final Judgment, the Source. They ended up making a movie about the Source family. Um, it's interesting now because for a while I was convinced that Jay Essex, the psychic extraordinaire. Hold on, bear with me 2 seconds. I literally had to pass gas and didn't want to do anyone the disservice of having to hear it. The Source family, becoming aware of weird experimental music. I knew that there were a lot of 1960s albums by this weird band called the Source family that were an actual cult, but like I said, you couldn't find all this information anywhere. And then, they published a book at the same time they made a movie. I don't know if they made the movie, but there's also a movie about the Source family you could see. Also, the secret source, the law of attraction, is one of seven hermetic laws. This is the other six. God bless you, Adam Parfrey. God bless you, Adam Parfrey, and all your work. I'm so sorry to hear about your passing. I hope the Feral House publications go into a good hand and do not run or turn to go out of print. I apologize. I would love to hang out for a little while longer, but I have to use the restroom. I'm going to be completely honest. So we're gonna have to end it. The law of nature, the call of nature. It's okay that a natural process. Maybe Robert de Grimstone's getting me from beyond the grave. I gotta go, folks. I love you. I love you all. I hope you got a lot out of this tribute. And yeah, fuck you. Better things to talk about, like Adam Parfrey. Sorry to see that he's went. I hope that this stuff made this long rambling conversation made sense in some level and worked for you guys. And like I said, I simply have to go. My ass is gonna explode. I love you. Take care. Wish me luck. I swear to God, I might not make it. Hold on. Love you. Bye bye.